Welcome to my channel, USA Battle Zone. Today, I'm going to share with you a story that isn't just about machines, guns, or battles. It's a story about humanity, about the kind of connection that makes even hardened warriors stop in their tracks. A story that begins with a routine task on an airbase far from home, and ends with a silence more powerful than the sound of any helicopter rotors or machine guns. The setting was a forward operating base in the Middle East. Dust clung to everything: the barracks, the mess hall, the hangars, and especially the helicopters. The AH-64 Apache gunships sat in neat lines like steel predators, their shadows cutting sharp edges into the sand. They were machines of war, symbols of dominance in the sky. But even steel beasts need care. Their engines, their rotors, their cannons all needed maintenance. And that was the job of the ground crews. Among them was Specialist Rebecca Lane. She wasn't the kind of soldier that made the news. She didn't fly, didn't fire missiles, didn't command. Her work was quieter but just as important. She was the one who kept the Apache's weapons clean, oiled, and ready. Every bolt, every barrel, every belt of ammunition, her hands touched them all. Her uniform was often stained with grease and dust, her face streaked with sweat from hours under the desert sun. That day, the sun was setting, bleeding gold and crimson into the horizon. Rebecca was bent over the Apache's M230 chain gun, wiping down the housing and checking the links in the ammo feed. She worked carefully, methodically, her lips pressed tight in concentration. To anyone passing by, it was routine. Just another day on the base. But what no one knew not yet was that this day would be different. Captain Daniel Mercer, one of the Apache pilots, had just returned from a reconnaissance mission. His bird was running hot, dust clogging the filters, the smell of burned jet fuel still lingering in the air. He dismounted, his boots crunching against the gravel, helmet tucked under his arm. For him, Rebecca was just another mechanic on the line. He had seen her around, maybe exchanged nods, but never spoken more than a few words. Pilots and ground crews often lived in different worlds, one in the sky, one on the ground. But as he approached his Apache, his eyes caught something unusual. Rebecca, still crouched by the cannon, had leaned forward slightly, and her right sleeve had ridden up. Sewn onto her uniform, just below the shoulder, was a patch. Not the standard unit insignia, not the flag they all wore, but a patch faded with age, its colors worn down by time. It was a wolf's head, stitched in gray and black, its teeth bared, its eyes burning red. Underneath, embroidered in tiny, nearly invisible letters, Wolfpack 21st Infantry Division. Daniel froze. His boots stopped mid-step, his breath caught in his throat. That patch, he knew it. Not because of history books, not because of stories, but because his brother, his older brother, Michael, had worn that exact same patch years ago, before he was killed in action. His heart pounded in his chest. For a moment, the sounds of the base faded, the rotors spinning in the distance, the hum of generators, the shouting of mechanics. All he could see was the patch. All he could think of was his brother, smiling at him across a kitchen table back home, telling him stories about the wolf pack, about the camaraderie, the danger, the pride. Rebecca felt the weight of someone's gaze and glanced up. She saw Captain Mercer standing there, rigid, his eyes locked on her arm. She straightened slowly, her rag still in hand, suddenly self-conscious. "Sir," she asked quietly. Daniel's voice was rough, almost breaking. "That patch, where did you get it?" Rebecca blinked. She looked down at her arm as though she'd forgotten it was even there. Her hand brushed against the worn fabric, and for a moment, her eyes softened. When she looked back up, her expression carried a shadow of something deeper. "It was my father's," she said. "He served in the Wolf Pack, 21st Infantry. Killed in Mosul. I kept the patch, brought it with me when I enlisted." The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. "My brother," he whispered. "He was with the Wolf Pack too. Michael Mercer. He didn't make it back." Rebecca's breath caught. She stared at him, her eyes widening slightly. "Michael Mercer," she repeated, her voice barely audible. "Your brother. I knew him." Daniel's head snapped up. "You knew him?" She nodded slowly, her hands trembling now. "My dad used to talk about him all the time. Said he was the kind of soldier everyone trusted. Said he had this way of making people laugh even when everything was falling apart. Her voice broke slightly. When my dad died, Michael came to see me. He visited my family. He gave me this patch and told me to keep it safe. Said it was a symbol of what they fought for. Tears burned in Daniel's eyes. He remembered those days after his brother's funeral, the blur of grief, the anger, the emptiness. He hadn't known about that visit, hadn't known that Michael had taken the time, before his final mission, to give a piece of himself to another family. Rebecca's hand went to the patch again, her fingers brushing over the threads. I wear it because it reminds me that I'm not alone. That people like your brother, like my dad, lived and fought with honor. Every time I clean this gun, every time I tighten a bolt or load a belt, I think about them. I think about what they gave up so we could keep going. Daniel couldn't speak. His vision blurred as a tear slipped down his cheek. He wasn't a man given to displays of emotion, not here, not in front of others. But this was different. It felt as though the ghosts of his brother and her father had reached across time and space to stand between them, binding them with invisible threads of memory and sacrifice. Rebecca's voice was soft, almost breaking. I'm sorry for your loss, sir. I really am. But maybe they're still with us. Maybe that's why we're here, why we crossed paths. The captain nodded slowly, unable to trust his voice. He reached out and gently touched the patch with his fingertips, as though it were sacred. His hand lingered there for a moment, trembling. Then he pulled it back, his chest rising and falling with deep, shaky breaths. For the rest of the evening, he stayed with her while she finished her work. They didn't talk much. Sometimes words aren't enough. But the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of presence, full of the memory of those who had gone before. The desert wind swept over the base, carrying the distant sound of rotor blades cutting through the night. Above them, the stars shone cold and clear, eternal witnesses to the stories of men and women who gave everything. From that day forward, Captain Mercer looked at Rebecca differently. Not just as a mechanic, not just as another soldier, but as someone carrying a part of his brother's spirit. Every time he stepped into the cockpit of his Apache, every time the chain gun roared in the skies above the desert, he carried that memory with him, not as a burden, but as a reminder of why he fought. And Rebecca, every time she cleaned the cannon or loaded the belts, felt the same. Two lives, bound by loss, but also by an unshakable connection. War takes many things. It takes fathers, brothers, daughters, sons. It takes laughter, it takes peace. But sometimes, in its shadow, it gives something back, an unexpected bond, a moment of recognition, a reminder that even in the darkest places, humanity can still shine through. That night, when Captain Mercer finally walked back to his quarters, he paused and looked up at the stars. For the first time in a long time, he whispered his brother's name, not with anger or grief, but with pride. And somewhere deep in the silence of the desert, it felt as though Michael had heard him. This is the story of a patch. A worn, faded piece of cloth that carried the weight of sacrifice, the memory of the fallen, and the power to bring two strangers together. Sometimes, the smallest things, an old stitch, a hidden emblem, carry the greatest meaning. So when you see a soldier, when you see the patches on their sleeves, remember they are not just decorations. They are legacies. They are stories written in thread and blood. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, if it made you pause and think about the sacrifices made by those who serve, then please, like, comment, and subscribe to USA Battle Zone. Share this story so others will remember, so that the names of heroes like Michael Mercer and Sergeant Lane will never fade into silence. Because sometimes, the greatest battles aren't fought with guns or helicopters. They're fought in our hearts, in the way we remember, in the way we carry their legacy forward.